to Tracing Your Family Roots. I'm Chuck Mason, and with me today is my co-host, partner in crime, Janelle Blue. First, we want to thank the Mount Vernon Genealogical Society, who sponsors our program. And what we're going to talk about today is what's new at ancestry.com. A couple of months ago, Janelle attended a conference, and a lot of things have changed at Ancestry. I knew some of them, but I didn't know all of them. So what's new at ancestry.com, Janelle?
Oh, there's a lot, and hopefully we can cover some of those today. I guess my first question for you is Ancestry your go-to database when you want to try to do something, or do you go to one of the others first?
Ancestry is the one that I go to the most. It's the one that seems to not do a whole lot of changes, and I'm paying for a subscription.
Yeah,
So,
you go.
and then my second one would be the Family Search site.
Yeah,
But Ancestry is the starting
So you
place.
go to, yeah. And so have you, if you've gone to it recently, have you noticed a lot of changes in the format and in all the bells and whistles?
I've seen changes. I have also found in the last 6 months, I have been going back and looking people up that I have looked at numerous
Before.
and I'm finding more information. So they are definitely adding things
Yes, they
to the
are.
website that weren't there before.
Now, do you have your tree on Ancestry?
I don't have a tree on Ancestry.
Okay. So that's okay. You can do it without the tree. But I think when we talk about some of the new features, that's when the tree really gets to be important. And so that may be something you want to reconsider. I think you told me that you did your DNA
I
with
did my
Ancestry.
DNA probably about 3 years ago.
Okay. So it's in there.
It's in there.
Yeah,
And periodically I get updates.
yeah.
And I get notices when new people have done their DNA and have matched mine. However, most of them are third, fourth, fifth, sixth generations of cousins, and and of course, a few of them have trees, but nothing that's helpful. So I haven't been able to connect with a lot of those.
Well, and I think in the past, Ancestry's been more about you going in and looking one-on-one and evaluating one-on-one. And so what they've been able to do with new technology, and AI is involved in that, they've been able to incorporate a lot of the information that you have in your tree, in your DNA matches, and then they, coordinate that with their own records, and they've been able to help you find a lot more information. They'll give it to you and they'll say, "What do you think? Is this right or not?" And so I think what I want to talk about today are some of those features. And by the way, I do not represent Ancestry. I have no financial affiliation with them in any way. I just happen to be a user. And I'm delighted with some of the new capabilities and the robustness of what they offer. And so that's why I thought it'd be useful for our viewers today to talk about some of that.
Yeah, I've been very happy with like some of the things that I have been able to find, and because I don't always look just at my family, different things or reasons. I'll look at people I knew. In fact, I was just looking yesterday on Ancestry. My father had the same first grade teacher that I had.
Wow.
And when my nephew was in kindergarten, she was still teaching.
Wow.
And I just, on a whim yesterday, I don't know what made me even think about her, I looked her up to find out she was still teaching at 80 years old.
Oh my gosh. Oh, bless everybody's heart on that
Yes.
one. Well, so just as of 2024, Ancestry will tell you they now have access or you have access as a subscriber to 60 billion records. And they're continuing to add them. That's a big number. They got 25 million DNA tests out there. And we'll talk about that because that makes a big difference in what they're able to then give you. 125 million trees are there. And then also they've incorporated newspapers.com. And they've not only incorporated it because they owned it, they bought it. Mm-hmm. But now they've indexed it because of the new technology. They've gone away from the OCR and they've gone into some better technology, including AI, so that they can index now. I think 16 billion documents have been indexed now off of just newspapers.com. And here's an example of what they've been able to do. And Krista Cowan, who is kind of one of the people who does a lot of presentations for Ancestry, used this example. And she said, a lot of times women are not referred to by their first name or even certainly not their maiden name.
And sometimes it's just and wife.
And wife. That's a little hard. But let's say it's Mrs. A.E. Schultz. Mm-hmm. Well, because they've been able to incorporate so much and because they've been able to index in a different way now, they can give you some suggestions they'll show you those articles and ask it, could this possibly be your grandmother?
Yeah.
And wow. I mean, that wouldn't even show up if you were just going into newspapers.com and putting in a name.
The kind of thing that we had in the newspaper in the county where I lived, there was the community news sections.
Yep.
And so somebody in the neighborhood wrote those columns.
Yep.
And of course, those were great things for kind of nosy news. So-and-so is going off to visit family here, or so-and-so has family from here, those kinds of things. And years ago when I was looking, because we had the lady next door and the lady that lived a couple doors down the end of the street, who both at different times were the reporter for those. And so, anything that happened in any family on our street specifically got into the newspaper. And, I've spent years going through the newspapers on microfilm at the Historical Society looking for those kinds of things.
But that's a manual.
But that would be
this is great
something that now I wouldn't have to do that.
Or we would at least be able to start with, hey, take a look at this. Could this possibly be your person? And wow, I mean, that'll kickstart a lot. And then you still have, if nothing else works, well, then you can go in and try something different. But anyway, they've done that. And of course, they've owned Fold 3 for a good while. And that's all the military information. And so all of those things are incorporated in.
And just something I want to add under Fold 3. There is a lot of information on Fold 3. But in case our viewers don't know, if you have somebody that served in the military, they have a personnel record that is out in St. Louis.
Right.
And those Ancestry does not have access to. And so you can order them. You go on the National Archives website and it takes you to the St. Louis Military Records Office and you can order those. And those have a lot of great information that you will not find on Ancestry. I fortunately have a friend who lives in St. Louis, so I've been able to pay her. And she's gotten me about a half dozen of them now. And most of what is in there is not what you would find on Fold 3.
Yeah.
So it's you need both.
Yeah. And, there was a fire a while ago, and so not everything is available anymore. But do you have to be next of kin to be able to get?
No. I did not have to be next of kin.
But they had to be dead, though. I mean,
yes.
deceased.
Yes, I have gotten a great uncle. I have gotten one of my mother's first cousins, and I have gotten some other, closer family relationships
Uh-huh.
as far as information. And yes, there was the fire in St. Louis in the early 70s, but one of the things they are doing with that is if you write in and have there's basically nothing there. And Sharon Hodges did this for her father. They basically, I don't remember whether they had nothing or they had very little, but Sharon happened to mention that she had things from her dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so they ask her for copies of those. So anything like that that they can get their hands on, that they can create a record, they'll add that to it. So, even though there was the fire, it's still worth contacting them and seeing what they say.
Because they're trying to rebuild.
Yes.
Yeah, which is what museums,
Yeah.
particularly museums, do, is try to get records from, because it's out there somewhere. Somebody's got it in a shoebox somewhere, in trying to get it. So I think what my point here is that not only do they have all of this information, they're beginning to incorporate it so that this wizard inside the technology can somehow pull it out and say, this might be yours. And we know that genealogy is not just about finding records. Genealogy is learning about your ancestor, trying to find information, and putting some color to the whole story. And so one of the things that Ancestry is now doing is incorporating some of that technology. First of all, I want to show you a couple of slides. Slide number 1, it's a report that has been generated out of the information that if you have a tree, and if they have, basically you've filled in some of the information, then, do you have Family Tree Maker?
No.
Okay, so that is a separate technology. And, basically Family Tree Maker, you go in, you input a tree, and then it gives you all these different reports. Well, now Ancestry is starting to do that too. And that is an example. It's not the whole report, but it's an example of a report that is similar to what Family Tree Maker will offer you too. And that is really good because you just generate it with the push of a button. And then on slide number 2, let's see what the next one is. That is, so they're looking at your tree. Now, remember that you have a tree. Hopefully you have a tree. Hopefully you'll get your tree updated. Everybody else has got a tree too. And in the past, you go to the tree. You start looking at all the trees with that surname. And you kind of have to go one by one and which one has the most documentation. And this way, they're beginning to aggregate those surnames into information. And so now they're starting to tell you how many people have that surname, what are the trees, how many of them have documentation, so that you can, and they list them. Mm-hmm. So you can go in and look at those without having to go back to the tree itself. And so that helps guide you a little bit on how to find this stuff. One more slide will show you now, and this is true on Family Tree Maker as well, the charts. And I just made a copy of the fan chart because I think those are really interesting. But they'll also do other kinds of charts as well. And so there you have it, just pushing the button. But you got to have a tree first. So that's really cool. Now, let's talk a bit about photos, because that's the part that maybe viewers haven't been focusing on, that now they can use these tools in Ancestry to be able to really work on those. If you've got a photo, you can upload it to the system. You can attach it to your tree. You can attach it to other formats. If you want to talk about that photo, you have the ability to record information and talk about that person or when the photo was made. If there are stories that you want to upload, that can all be done. Let's look at slide number 5. And I think that's the right one. Nope, try 4 maybe. There we go. It shows you all the different things that you can do. And it's amazing what can be done on that. And what's important, because then it's in there. Krista Cowan talks about connecting with the young people in her family and how she wants to try to engage them. And she uses Instagram, and she has them follow her on Instagram, which is technology that they know about and they use. She can put stories out on Instagram. They can respond. Those can go uploaded back into this system. So we're beginning to find all ways to integrate what is so important in trying to put together your family story. So that is the newest concept that that Ancestry is doing, and so here's another one. You put that photo in, and it's really blurry. And I think I've got a slide that will show. There's a slide that we can put up that will show that one. So what they've done there is, in the second one, they've shown how they sharpened the image. So if you've got, and old photos are often pretty blurry after, 150 years. And this thing will sharpen it. Now, anytime you mess with something like that, you might distort it in some way. So you have to be careful. But that is something that you can do. And at least sometimes it opens up their eyes a little bit. The example on the left shows you how they took a black and white photo and they colorized it. And again, that's not really typical of the times, because most photos were either sepia or black and white, but it does, in some cases, it can colorize and look pretty natural.
Well, and some of them, even if you could just lighten things.
Yeah.
Because I had some from the 30s and 40s that, the background is almost as dark. They tended to wear darker clothes.
Yeah.
In color, and the background is kind of dark too, and it's hard to distinguish a whole lot.
Yeah, and if you just if you just use one of those editing tools and lighten the whole thing, then you're still not seeing the faces as well. So this sharpening tool will help do that. Now, I did that the other day on one guy, and it looked really weird. So you have to be careful. But in some cases, it might really bring it to life a little bit. They got a new tagline. It's called "It's a Family Thing." And what they're trying to do is to help you incorporate your family into this process. They say Ancestry, doing genealogy, is such a singular sort of effort. Mm-hmm. And in the case of Krista, for instance, she and her father have a standing time every week, and they share the same Ancestry account and the same tree. So they can talk about it, they can upload, they can do everything at the same time while they're talking through it.
That's their Sunday night activity.
That's their Sunday night. Yeah, but you can do any night of the week you want, or day. But the point is that you're engaging others. And so many people, when I say, have you done your Ancestry research, and they'll say, well, Aunt Grace did all that, and she just passed it around and said, we've got everything. Well, no, you don't.
But the problem with that is, did Aunt Grace know what she was doing? Because I have a few of those,
Yeah.
and I have had to sort through and go back and find things that were incorrect and correct them to get a true picture of the
Exactly.
family.
But Aunt Grace may have had some detail in there that were stories or things that she had knowledge of.
Yeah,
And so it's useful, but taking Aunt Grace's information and putting it into a new system that you can then document and corroborate, I think is really important. So what they've done is they've said if you get a subscription, an all access subscription, which by the way is, about $250 or so, then you can have up to 4 family members sharing in that. So they don't have to go out and buy their own. And then you can decide what access you want them to have to your family tree, or they can go out and do their own if they want to work on a different line that you don't have on there. But if you want to be able to collaborate a bit, then this is a way to do it without having to get 4 subscriptions. So that kind of changes your attitude about the cost a little
yeah,
bit. Now, it's important to take a look at what kind of access you're going to give somebody, because I recently was fiddling around, just trying out new tools and things, and somehow I managed to jump into somebody's tree that they had given me full access to, and it was an accident. And they sent me an email and said, "What are you doing in my tree?" And I said, "Okay, limit my access. I just want to view it. I don't want to be able to do anything." So you have to decide who gets full access and who just has viewing, or who can add new documents but can't change anything.
yeah, because you want to be sure that you can trust that person.
Yes.
And I know of a case a number of years ago where a cousin, I believe it was, kept changing this person's tree, and they had incorrect information. They had something, I believe it was from a book, where she had the actual documents and the information was wrong, and this other person kept changing it. And
Oh,
there was a battle going back and forth. So,
well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it was in the past, but Ancestry now, you can't unless somebody gives you permission. You can, unlike Family Search, where you can go in and make changes to any of those trees. Here, it's only if you give them permission. So that's comforting to know. And of course, then if you've got that kind of access, you can go in and add a story without having to send it to the person who owns the thing and have them do it. You can go ahead and add it in directly.
yeah, and you may be a person who knows the story because you had a closer relationship, and the person who owns the tree. As an example, I have a second cousin and I have a first cousin that have trees on Ancestry, but I lived a mile from all of my grandparents, or less from all of my grandparents. So I know stories, particularly from my mother's side of the family, that neither of them ever heard. And particularly my first cousin, I have asked specifically, "Did you know this?" And no, he didn't know.
Yeah.
Because he lived in Alabama. Well, in Germany initially, his father was in the military. And so, he saw my grandparents once a year, where I saw them just about every week at least once.
Can you put up slide 7? Because I just wanted, I mean, if you've used Ancestry very much, then you know about the card catalog.
Yeah.
But what's important is to keep going back into that card catalog, because you can see there, I've given you an example of a brand new source that they've added, and also one where they've shown that they've updated. They've added more. And by the way, there's a couple in there from New Jersey that I put in for your benefit, just in case you don't know that they're in there now, because those things get added so regularly. And if you don't know about card catalog, just go into the drop-down menu. You'll see it. It's wonderful. And that can be sorted by location, more than likely location. And then also, probably not the surname as much, because they're really giving you sources of what they've got. And we don't have that many minutes left, but what's really important at this point is if you've done the DNA, or if you think you might want to do the DNA with Ancestry, that's going to really help in them pulling together all of this information. And I want to show you slide 8, because that is that's beginning to show you where your matches are. And it might help you to be able to figure out, in my case, I was able to sort of confirm that I think my ancestor came from a specific area within the Hanover region.
Mm-hmm.
And that's beginning to help me pinpoint where they're at, because I have nothing right now that tells me that. So that's really important. The next slide would show you, this is where they begin to take information from your matches, and they also know that it's parent 1 or parent 2. They don't know whether parent 1 is your mother or your father, but they know that this DNA is coming from one line or the other in most cases. And so they're beginning to give you hints on, could this be somebody that is important? And so I think that plus the through lines, I think that was the through lines. And then there's some other stuff that we're just not going to have time to tell you about. But my gosh, it's worth going in there and noodling around and seeing what they have available.
Yes, thank you, Janelle, for sharing this. It's definitely something that has really become in the last year or so, more advanced than it was.
Because of the technology and because of AI. And by the way, this is not the only database that does this. MyHeritage is doing a lot too, and there are others. So, stay in touch with your local society or with the National Genealogical Society to find out what all these new things are. Roots Tech, for instance, is really important. So.
Well, thank you.
Hopefully that's been a little helpful.
Being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.